Hello, and welcome to another short educational video from New Century Planning Associates. My name is Bob Ryerson. I'm the founder of New Century, and I'm pleased to have my long-term partner, Lou Torrero, here.
Hi, Bob.
Hey, Louie. We're going to talk today about a very important retirement planning subject called Roth conversions. You know, Lou, before we get to the details on a Roth conversion, I think it's important that everybody understands a basic concept, and that is the government, the IRS, looks at our money in terms of how it's taxed every year, right? So different accounts, we refer to them as buckets. So
Yes.
One bucket is the taxable bucket. What is that?
Well, the taxable bucket really is money that you receive, accounts where you get a 1099 or W-2 and so on, and you pay tax on that money every single year.
And then there's the tax deferred bucket, and the usual suspects there are
401ks, 403bs, IRAs, anything that you have not paid money, you have not paid tax on, but you will at some point in the future.
and then the best bucket, the tax-free bucket.
Yes, that's everyone's favorite bucket, Bob. It's the bucket where the money here, the growth and the distributions and the income from this bucket is completely tax-free.
So it's an important concept to understand. The Americans are trained to save money in this bucket. That's where most people have most of their money. It's logical. They give you an incentive to put money here. But what happens with people who are successful accumulating money in bucket two, by the time they get to their 60s and certainly their 70s, there are implications. You may have a very large number here and you say to yourself, I have blah, blah, blah there, but you don't. You have one or possibly two silent partners.
Remember that all this money is not all yours. I mean, you might receive statements, you might receive correspondence and so on with your name on it, but there's a silent partner, and that is Uncle Sam.
And depending on the state you live in, you may have a second silent partner, the state. So be aware of that, and we don't know what that number is going to be, what their share is. So we're going to talk today about the concept of shifting money from this bucket to the superior tax-free bucket, and that is called, this green arrow represents...
That's the topic of today's video. It's a Roth conversion where you move money from this bucket to this bucket.
And so what do you mean by that? If somebody has money in an IRA or a 401k or a 403b here and they convert, is the phrase we use, they
Correct.
convert money to Roth status, what do you have to do first?
Well, it's something that you have to make sure that you're converting to an account, meaning that you must have a Roth account established as a condition for moving money from this bucket to this bucket.
So you establish a Roth IRA with the custodian, and then you instruct that custodian, usually it's 1 or 2 pages.
Right, it's a form, as you said, 1 or 2 pages where you fill out the form, you give it to the custodian, and they proceed to make a bookkeeping entry that essentially moves money from the second bucket over to the third or Roth bucket.
So you said a key word, it's a bookkeeping entry. You're not selling things, taking a check and putting it here. It's just a paper shuffle.
Yes, in fact, if you have cash here, or if you have stocks here, or if you have bonds here, etc., it's a bookkeeping entry to move the money to here. You don't do anything, just submit that form to the custodian, and they're responsible for doing that bookkeeping entry. There's no cash that's sold, there's no securities liquidated, there's no bonds redeemed, etc.
So that's good news. You don't have to liquidate, you're just going to shift over whatever you want to shift over.
Correct.
What happens when you move, if you move 10,000 or 50 or 500,000 over, what happens next April?
Well, the next April, you will get a 1099, meaning that you'll receive a document from that custodian, and basically you have to include that amount on the 1099 in your taxable income on your tax return.
Right, so this is not a pain-free process. It's a good one, it's smart.
Remember, the taxes have not been paid on this money, and when you move the taxes, when you move the funds to the tax-free bucket, at that point you do have income which you have to report on your personal tax return.
So depending on your tax bracket, you know, Lou likes to say this is a year-by-year decision because there's times when it's smart to do this and there are times where you may not want to do it. Louis, are there any limits on the amount that you can convert in any year?
There's no limits whatsoever. If you're crazy to pay taxes on X dollars, Y dollars, or Z dollars, there's no limit on how much you can move. However, it has to be a very thought out and planned decision. Exactly how much money are you going to move from the second bucket over to the third bucket?
And it's not necessarily a one-shot deal. In fact, if people have a lot of money in bucket two, We normally do Roth conversions over 5 or 10 years.
Correct, because there's a lot of careful thought to this. For example, a lot of planning needs to be done. For example, we want to make sure that you have the cash to pay the taxes. Number two, we want to make sure that you know exactly and you have an estimate of how much the taxes are going to be, and you don't want to necessarily move to a higher tax bracket in this process.
And you as the CPA, you and Victor, the CPAs, when we run a Roth study for somebody, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, 7, 10, you show them exactly what the effect would be on Medicare premiums, Social Security, state, federal, everything, to the dollar.
Right. We look at the implications, the other implications concerning Roth conversions, and it may impact, for example, Social Security taxes in the future. It may impact Medicare taxes, and there's a lot of implications that we really do need to go over and discuss thoroughly and present to you in that Roth conversion study.
Lou, suppose somebody sees the wisdom of this, but they're under 59 and a half, and they have an IRA or 401k. Can they still do a conversion?
Yes, they can. They can still do a conversion. However, what we recommend strongly is that they pay the tax from this bucket, because if you don't pay the tax from that bucket, there can be serious consequences.
So in other words, you're not taxed or penalized under 59 and a half on the conversion, but if you do withholding of taxes and you're under 59 and a half, that would be subject to the penalty. So you want to pay the taxes from bucket one.
When would be a good time to do a Roth conversion, Bob?
So we think right now there's quite a few good reasons. First of all, if you look at the 110-year history of tax rates in the country, they're historically pretty low. They're pretty attractive right now, at least for the next 2-3 years. Then they're likely to go up. So right now we have historically low rates. Second thing is people have to understand, once you do this, if you move 50 or 100,000 over, the government says you're done. That money's never taxed again. In fact, it's immediately available for you. The government says you've paid.
What about the growth on that money? For example, you do a Roth conversion on January 10th or 12th or 15th, and it grows, and on December 31st, you have a lot more in that Roth account.
Okay, so
and you take out any money's tax-free.
Well, there's a 5-year rule. So when you convert, that money is available. Not that you want to do that, you want to let it grow. But what Lou is referring to is that the growth, it could be dramatic, it could be, you nail it with a tech stock, it could be something conservative, CDs and annuities, but all of the growth and income is going to be tax-free, but there is a 5-year wait. There's a 5-year rule. So the conversion's available, but the growth is a 5-year rolling situation. However, the point being, if you are aggressive here and you do very well, all that is tax-free forever.
Okay, very good, very good. And the other question is, what kind of assets can you convert from tax-deferred to tax-free?
Well, that's a good question. I want to give, before we get to that, I want to give a couple more reasons. So we said historically low rates, all the growth is tax-free. The money that you leave from bucket 3, if you leave money in a Roth to loved ones, it's tax-free for them as well. So this is forever tax-free money. It's a very powerful concept. The other thing is, if you're having a year where you have low income, lower than normal, you're laid off, you're retired, whatever the case is, that's a good time to do a Roth. And nobody wants a portfolio that's down, but if your portfolio is lower, everything else being equal, it's a great time to move money, right? We'll pay tax when it's lower. So there's really 4 or 5 good reasons. You just asked about what can we do. We don't want to confine our thinking. Whatever you can own in a regular IRA, you can own in a Roth. So there's no, it could be precious metals, it could be stocks and bonds, it could be CDs. Anything you can own in an IRA, you can also own in a Roth. So please don't confine your thinking. You can be as aggressive or as conservative as you want to be.
Wait a minute.
No limitations.
What if you have artwork in this second bucket? What if you have, for example, cryptocurrencies in the second bucket? Can you also convert that?
All of these assets are convertible. It may be a little trickier than doing an ETF or a stock, but everything can be converted. Depends on the custodian and again, the withholding and that type of thing. So this notion of spreading out, if there's a lot of money here and you say, well, I have, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million in bucket 2, maybe that's not practical. We think of it, whatever you get over here, whatever comes over here is a win. If you get $500,000, $1 million, whatever is here is insulated from whatever's coming down the road in terms of tax increases. It's insulated forever for you and for other generations. So whatever you get over, you get over. We tend to do it over a number of years, and that's what the Roth study shows, right?
Correct. And what about spouses and children? What role or how are they impacted by this Roth conversion?
Well, they're not. If they're inheriting a Roth, there's no impact other than the fact that even a Roth that's inherited has required distributions, right? So any inherited account has required minimum distributions. However, they're tax-free. And I think that's because the government wants to get the money circulating. So it's a required distribution, but it's tax-free. But then once it's out in the system, it's taxed again. So I think we could make a compelling case. We gave a number of reasons. The mechanics are really not that difficult. You just have to let your custodian know. But as you like to say, this is a year-by-year
Absolutely.
look. This is not something you just set and forget. Things change over time, and we typically want to look at a study, and we want to look every fall at the situation.
Yes, because, for example, we have to find out what the individual's income was, okay, whether he had a lot of
Big
income
year,
or less.
bad year, yeah.
Exactly.
But it's the most powerful tool, in our opinion, that we have, because over a period of time, you can get enormous amounts of money here, and it's insulated from all future tax increases. All the income and growth is tax-free, all the way down the line. Very powerful.
Sneaky question. Do a lot of advisors do this?
Not too many. It's pretty complicated. And not too many people are familiar with it, but we have studied it, and we think it's the best planning tool.
So we're advocating paying taxes ahead of schedule?
Okay, so this is not for everybody. Sometimes we don't win the battle. If people say, what are you guys, crazy? I'm not paying all that. I'll just take my time and spread it out. Again, there are historically low rates. All the future growth is tax-free. We are of the strong opinion that tax rates will be higher in the future. So we think there are some good reasons, and we'd like to show you those. However, you can have a great retirement without it. Just be aware that if taxes do go up in the future, or if you leave big money to loved ones here, they could get shellacked with taxes. So you're right. It's not for everybody, but we think it's worth a look. It's worth a look.
Very good.
Okay, so if you have questions or want more information, please give us a call. We have information on the website as well, but it certainly is worth a look in our opinion.